She was serving champagne at a black tie gala when she saw it. Her stolen engagement ring, the one bought with her stolen money, sparkling on the finger of the woman who was once her best friend. Standing right beside them was the most dangerous man in the room, and he was watching her. He was about to offer her something far more powerful than revenge. He was about to offer her everything. But first, she would have to choose a side. And once she did, there would be no going back. Before we begin this incredible story, if you love tales of betrayal, justice, and unexpected love, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? This is a story about a woman who lost everything to the people she loved most and discovered that sometimes the most dangerous path is the one that leads you exactly where you were always meant to be. It is a powerful reminder that your worst betrayal can become your greatest transformation if you have the courage to stop being invisible and start fighting back. The sound of champagne glasses was a delicate chime, signaling an end to the life I once knew. I was hiding in a corner of the grand rosewood ballroom, feeling the cheap fabric of my uniform chafe my skin. Above me, crystal chandeliers threw splintered light onto marble floors. Floors I was supposed to walk across as a guest, not a servant. The entire room smelled like a mixture of expensive perfume and old fortunes, the kind built on legacies I could never touch. In this world, I was a ghost, another server, hired to pour champagne for people who would never see my face. My hand shook as I arranged tiny pieces of smoked salmon on a tray. Just 3 months before, I would have been here on Marcus's arm, wearing the sapphire gown he promised me. 3 months before, I thought happy endings were real. A woman's voice, sharp and demanding, sliced through the air. "We need more champagne over here." It was a voice I knew too well. A cold knot formed in my stomach. It was Sophia, my college best friend, the woman who was supposed to be my maid of honor, the person I told every secret to, who knew every one of my dreams. She stood just 20 feet from me, poured into a custom Valentino dress the color of spilled wine. Her arm was coiled tightly around Marcus's waist. My Marcus, but he was no longer mine. "Darling, you are absolutely breathtaking tonight," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Those were the exact words he used 6 months ago when he asked me to marry him on a rainy bridge in Central Park. I forced myself to turn away, my eyes burning with tears. The tray in my hands trembled, and a champagne glass slid toward the edge. "Be careful." A deep voice, smooth like fine whiskey, came from just behind me. I froze, but did not turn. "I am fine." "You do not look fine." The voice was closer now. I could smell his cologne, a mix of sandalwood and something else, something much more dangerous. It reminded me of gunpowder. The idea was strange, but it clung to my thoughts. I finally turned around, and any words I had prepared vanished. He stood far too close, breaking the unspoken rule of distance between guests and staff. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair brushed back from a face that looked like it belonged in a classic Italian painting. He had a strong jaw and eyes so dark they appeared black under the ballroom lights. He was maybe 35, perhaps 40 years old, but he moved with the heavy certainty of a man who had seen far too much. The suit he wore was probably worth more than my entire apartment. It was a custom, midnight black creation with platinum cufflinks that glittered. But it was not his suit that stole my breath. It was the way the crowd naturally parted for him, leaving an invisible circle of respect wherever he went. It was the 2 men in dark suits who stood at a distance, their gazes sweeping the room constantly. Their hands never strayed far from the inside of their jackets, a clear signal they were armed. You were about to drop that, he said, nodding at my tray. I glanced down and saw the champagne flute was indeed tilting. I quickly set it straight, a hot blush creeping up my neck. Thank you. Do you happen to know who I am? The question was not arrogant. It was stated with a calm, almost gentle curiosity. Should I know? A hint of something sparked in his dark eyes. It might have been amusement, or maybe interest. Most people do. I am not most people. The reply came out colder than I meant for it to. All the bitterness from the last 3 months was dripping from my voice, like venom. His lips twitched into something that was almost a smile. No, I can see that you are not. From across the room, Sophia's rehearsed laughter echoed. The one she said made her sound both sophisticated and fun. She was proudly showing her new engagement ring to a small group of women. The diamond was enormous, catching the light like a star. It was my diamond, the one Marcus bought with the profits from an investment deal we had built together. He had stolen all my research, used my contacts, and claimed the entire project as his own genius. That is a very large stone, the stranger noted, his gaze following mine. His voice had lost its warmth. It should be, I heard myself say. It was purchased with stolen money. Stolen? I clamped my mouth shut. What was I doing? You do not confess your life's problems to a powerful stranger at a party where you are paid to be invisible. I should not have said that. Please excuse me. I have to return to my duties. His hand closed around my wrist. The grip was not harsh, but it was unbreakable. His skin was warm, and I felt calluses on his fingers that did not belong on a man wearing a $10,000 suit. What is your name, Elena? The lie was automatic. I had been using my middle name for this job, saving my real name, Natalia, for what little was left of my old self. Elena, he said the name slowly, as if he were savoring a fine wine. My name is Mr. Castellano. Just then, a frantic man in an ill-fitting suit hurried toward us, holding a tablet. Sir, he stammered, the Hong Kong deal needs your final signature, and the senator is asking about the campaign contribution. Not right now, Michael. The man, Castellano, did not even glance away from my face. The nervous assistant turned pale. But sir, the deadline is... I said not now. His voice was quiet, but the air around us grew instantly colder. The man named Michael practically ran away, stumbling backward in his haste. Castellano turned his full attention back to me, his intense expression softening just a little. You were telling me about stolen money? It does not matter. I pulled my wrist free from his grasp, suddenly realizing that people were now watching us. A server was not supposed to have long conversations with a guest, especially not a guest who could make other men tremble with a single phrase. What if I told you it matters a great deal? He took a step closer, and I smelled it again, sandalwood and pure danger. What if I told you that I cannot tolerate a thief? My heart began to pound inside my chest. I saw something in his eyes that told me he was not talking about a simple business deal. This was a man who understood theft on a much deeper, more permanent level. Then we would have something in common. The reckless words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. Do you know that woman? He asked, tilting his head slightly toward Sophia, who was now smiling for photographers with Marcus beside her. The one wearing your stolen ring. How did you know that? I pay close attention to things. His gaze locked with mine. And you are not nearly as invisible as you believe you are, Elena. The way he said my fake name sent a shiver down my spine, as if he knew it was a lie and was simply choosing to play along. She was my best friend, I confessed. The truth tasting like ash, and he was my fiancé, until 3 months ago, when I came home from a business trip and found them together. I stopped talking, horrified at myself. Why was I telling this man everything? I am so sorry. You do not want to hear all of my personal problems. On the contrary, he replied. He reached inside his jacket. I flinched, but all he removed was a business card. It was made of thick, expensive paper with embossed letters I could not make out in the dim light. I find your problems to be very interesting. Why? His smile was suddenly sharp, like broken glass. Because, Elena, that woman stole something from a person I care about very much. And in my world, all theft must be repaid. Before I could process his words, Sophia's voice called out, cutting through the space between us. Daddy. I could only watch in stunned horror as Sophia floated toward our corner, with Marcus following her, like a trained dog. She was smiling, completely unaware of the ice-cold expression that had taken over Castellano's face. Daddy, oh no, it could not be. The universe could not be this cruel. Daddy, I have been searching for you all night. Sophia kissed the air next to both of his cheeks. I saw him go rigid for just a fraction of a second. Marcus and I wanted to introduce you to the Hendersons. They are thinking about investing in his new company. Her eyes passed right over me, completely blank, with the kind of dismissive look, the very rich reserve for the people who serve them. Sophia, Castellano's voice was cold enough to freeze fire. I do believe you are acquainted with this young woman. Sophia's eyes came back to me, and she frowned as she tried to remember my face. Then recognition slowly appeared, followed by a wave of pure panic, and then cold, hard contempt. Natalia, what are you doing here? So much for my disguise. I am working, I said, lifting my tray. I hated how weak and small my voice sounded. Unlike some people, I actually have to earn a living. Marcus stepped in front of her, his handsome face arranged into a mask of fake concern. Nat, I truly hope there are no hard feelings between us. What happened was unfortunate, but Sophia and I are unfortunate. The word ripped out of me. You stole 2 years of my life's research. You presented it to the board as your own work, got a promotion using my professional contacts, and you left me with absolutely nothing. Then you started sleeping with my best friend while I was at home planning our wedding. That is not unfortunate, Marcus. That is betrayal. That is a very serious accusation, Marcus replied smoothly, his calm lawyer voice taking over, and it is completely untrue. The research was a collaboration, and if you believe I was given too much credit... Collaboration? I took a step toward him, forgetting the tray in my hands. I have the emails, Marcus. I have the drafts with my name all over them. I have timestamps that prove I created every single algorithm and every projection. Enough, Sophia snapped, her perfect composure finally breaking. God, Natalia, you are just so pathetic. Why can't you just let it go? Marcus did not steal a single thing from you. It was your own weakness, Sophia, the fear that he was better than you. Castellano's words sliced through her tirade with surgical precision. Stand down, she flinched, her eyes wide with disbelief. Father, you cannot understand. She has been making our lives miserable. I said, stand down. His tone was absolute, leaving no space for debate. Sophia stumbled back a step, a mix of confusion and genuine fear washing over her features. I had never witnessed her show fear of her father. The man she described was always a loving, if absent, businessman, absorbed by his travels. But the man beside me now was anything but absent. He radiated a deadly intensity. Mr. Castellano, Marcus began, offering a placating hand. My apologies for this disturbance. Natalia is struggling to come to terms with our engagement. Castellano completely ignored the offered hand. His gaze locked onto mine, and a strange current passed through them that stole the air from my lungs. It was not compassion, but something deeper, something far more potent. Was your statement about the stolen research accurate? Yes. I held his stare, my voice firm, even though my hands trembled at my sides. I have the proof. She is a liar, Daddy, Sophia insisted, clutching his arm desperately. Marcus and I are planning our wedding. Are you really going to take the word of a bitter ex-girlfriend over your own flesh and blood? For a painfully long moment, Castellano remained perfectly still. Then, he shifted his attention to one of the men in dark suits standing guard. Vincent, please escort Miss Romano to my vehicle. We are departing. What? No! Sophia's protest was a shrill cry. Father, what is the meaning of this? I am taking you home. Marcus, await my call. Do not attempt to visit the house until you hear from me. His eyes returned to me, and I recognized a sharp, calculating intelligence in his gaze. And you, Natalia, are coming with us. What? You claimed you could substantiate your claims. I want to see this evidence. Sir, I am on the clock. I cannot simply walk away. Your employment here is finished. He gave a slight nod to Vincent, who produced a phone and made a brief call. Your manager has been very generously compensated for your shift. This was happening too fast. My mind screamed at me to refuse, to turn and run, but I found myself giving a slow nod, compelled by a force I could not identify. Perhaps it was the swift way he had come to my defense. Perhaps it was the glimmer of justice I believed had been extinguished forever. Or perhaps it was the lingering warmth on my wrist from where his fingers had briefly touched my skin. Excellent. Castellano settled a hand on the small of my back, steering me toward the doors. The contact sent a jolt through the thin fabric of my uniform. We have a great deal to talk about. As we moved past Sophia and Marcus, I saw the raw fury contorting Sophia's face, and the rising panic in Marcus's eyes. They had been so certain of their victory. They believed they had silenced me for good. They were oblivious to the fact they had just provoked a conflict with a man they could not handle. And in that moment, so was I. The car was not what I would have imagined. I pictured plush leather and darkened windows, the kind of luxury sedan with a privacy screen. What I entered was a mobile command center, a black Mercedes Maybach with glass so dark it resembled polished stone, and armor plating I could feel in the solid, definitive sound of the closing doors. The technology inside was likely worth more than my entire family home. Vincent was at the wheel. Another man, with a broader build and a pale scar bisecting his left cheek, occupied the front passenger seat. Both men were silent, their professionalism a quiet threat, as their eyes scanned every reflection. I was seated in the back, with Castellano beside me and Sophia fuming on his other side. The air in the car felt thick and heavy, making the spacious interior seem claustrophobic. Sophia alternated between shooting me looks of pure hatred and trying to win her father's sympathy with tears that never managed to fall. Daddy, please. This is humiliating. Marcus is still there waiting. Marcus will wait for as long as I decide. Castellano's full attention was on his phone, his thumbs moving across the glass with practiced speed. In fact, I suggest Marcus begins searching for a new financial backer. And a new bride. What? Sophia's voice shattered. You cannot be serious. I am always serious when dealing with thieves, Sophia. You are well aware of this. He finally turned to look at her, and the profound disappointment in his gaze was so sharp it made me recoil. How long did you know about his deception? Sophia's mouth worked, but no sound came out. He did not do it. Natalia is making it all up. Try that again. His voice lowered to a menacing whisper. And as you do, recall that my entire fortune was built on my ability to recognize a lie. The silence that followed was a living thing, crackling with an almost physical tension. I leaned into the car door, acutely aware that I was sealed in a confined space with a truly dangerous man and his increasingly frantic daughter. 6 months, Sophia finally confessed in a choked whisper. I have known for 6 months. A wave of nausea rolled through my stomach. 6 months. She knew before Marcus had even asked me to marry him. She knew while she helped me browse for wedding locations and sample cakes. She knew while she held my hand as I wept over my mother's failing health, assuring me that things would turn out fine. You knew, I said, the words barely audible, as the betrayal sliced into me all over again. You knew from the very beginning. It was not about you, Nat. Sophia refused to look at me. Marcus had to get that promotion. His parents were putting enormous pressure on him to get married. And you? You were always going to be okay. You are brilliant. You always recover. So, you let him sabotage her career and claim her work as his own to benefit your boyfriend. Castellano's voice was as sharp as broken glass. And then you dared to celebrate it in her face while she was forced to serve you champagne at your engagement party. I had no idea she would be working that event. Sophia's tears were real this time, carving paths through her expensive makeup. Besides, I did not actually steal anything. Marcus was the one who... Enough. That single word cut her off instantly. Castellano then focused on me, his dark eyes holding a softness I had not seen before. Where is your home, Natalia? Why do you ask? Because you are going to present this proof you have, and then you and I will determine the next course of action. I can send you the files by email. I have no faith in emails. They can be forged, they can be intercepted. His eyes held mine firm. I require verification in person, unless there is another place you are expected tonight. Was there? I checked the time on the vehicle's illuminated dashboard. It was 9:47 in the evening. My gala shift was supposed to finish at midnight, with at least another hour of cleaning after that. I would have gotten home around 2 in the morning, fallen into bed, and woken up at 6 for my other job at the coffee shop. It was the same soul-crushing routine I had been stuck in since Marcus's treachery had cost me my career, my home, and my future. No, I confessed in a low voice. I have nowhere else to be. Good. He leaned forward to address the driver. Vincent, take us to Miss Romano's address first. We will go home after. We traveled through the heart of Manhattan without another word. The city's vibrant lights smearing past the darkened windows. I gave Vincent directions to my place in Washington Heights, a walk-up on the 4th floor of a building where the elevator was reliable only on Tuesdays, and the hallway had a permanent scent of old grease and quiet desperation. As the imposing car came to a stop at the curb, I noticed Sophia wrinkling her nose in open disgust. This is where you live? Some of us do not have a trust fund, I snapped back, grabbing for the door. Castellano's hand closed around my wrist again, his grip just as firm and surprisingly gentle as before. Vincent will secure the building first. It is standard procedure. Procedure for what? For staying alive. He delivered the line so casually, it was as if he were commenting on the weather. Vincent and the scarred man, whose name I still did not know, slipped out of the car and vanished inside my building. 5 minutes passed before Vincent re-emerged and gave Castellano a nod. The building is clear, sir. 4th floor, apartment 4C. She is the only resident. No indication of any surveillance or forced entry. How could he possibly know my apartment number? I had only provided the street address. Castellano must have read the question on my face. I am a meticulous man, Natalia. It is the reason I am still here. He pushed his own door open, then stopped. Sophia, you will remain here with Marco. But father, you will wait here. He stepped out onto the pavement, then pivoted to offer me his hand. I hesitated, my eyes fixed on it for a second. His fingers were strong, marked with strange calluses, and a platinum band sat on his right hand, etched with symbols I did not understand. Accepting his hand felt like more than just help getting out of a car. It felt like stepping across a line into a different world. I took it. His palm was warm and his grip was solid, and as I found my footing on the fractured sidewalk, he did not let go right away. We stood there for a heartbeat, his thumb tracing a line over my knuckles in a gesture that seemed entirely instinctive. "Show me the way," he said softly. The journey up 4 flights of stairs seemed to stretch into eternity. I was intensely aware of his large frame behind me, his presence dominating the cramped stairwell. Vincent and Marco formed a protective detail around us, their gazes sweeping over every dark corner. We passed my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, on the third-floor landing, and her eyes widened in alarm at the sight of my companions before she quickly retreated into her apartment. My own hands were trembling slightly as I turned the key in my lock. The apartment was precisely what one would expect for $800 a month in this part of the city. It was a studio apartment so small it felt like a walk-in closet, with a kitchen area that offered only a hot plate and a small refrigerator. The bathroom was designed so you could use the toilet while washing your hands in the sink. The Murphy bed, which I had unfolded that morning, was still down. A hot flush of shame washed over me. Castellano entered, and the tiny room seemed to shrink by half. Vincent stood guard in the hall, while Marco remained at the base of the stairs. The lock clicked behind us, and I was suddenly alone with a man whose quiet words could make powerful people tremble and reduce his own daughter to tears. "It is not very much," I murmured, stating the obvious. "It is tidy and methodical." His gaze moved over the room, noting the worn-out, second-hand furniture and the neat pile of books from the library on my windowsill. A framed picture of my mother sat on the small desk. It was a constant reminder of why I was still fighting, even though I was barely hanging on. I turned my attention to my laptop, a 5-year-old machine held together by sheer will and a lot of black electrical tape. The proof was all in there. Everything that showed the research was mine. He moved to stand behind me. He was so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, and I could smell that captivating mix of sandalwood and something else, something like pure danger. I tried to focus on opening the files, but my fingers felt clumsy and trembled on the keyboard. "Breathe, Natalia." His voice was quiet, almost intimate in the cramped space. "I am not going to hurt you." How am I supposed to know that? The question slipped out, sharper than I had intended. "I do not even know who you are. All I know is that your daughter betrayed me, and you clearly have enough money to pay off my supervisor without a second thought. For all I know, you are a criminal." He completed my thought with a hint of dark humor. "Would that frighten you? It should, shouldn't it? Most people would say yes." He reached past me, and his arm brushed against mine as he pointed to a file folder on the screen. "But you are still here. You are still showing me your evidence. That means you are either very courageous or very desperate. Perhaps you are both." I opened the first document. It was my original research proposal, dated 2 years ago. The tracked changes clearly showed Marcus's later input, which was nothing more than him putting his name on my work. Here, this is where it all began. For the next hour, Castellano examined everything. He was methodical and asked pointed questions that revealed a brilliant business mind. He even spotted inconsistencies that I had overlooked, like timestamps proving Marcus had accessed my cloud storage without any permission. He found emails where Marcus had forwarded my confidential work to company executives, passing it off as his own. "This is completely damning," he said at last, straightening up from where he had been leaning over my shoulder. "With this kind of proof, you could sue him for intellectual property theft, for defamation, for fraud, and destroy his career before it even has a chance to start." I already tried. The admission was painful. I filed formal complaints with the company, but Marcus had already charmed his way into the good graces of the executives. "They dismissed it as a simple," he said, she said scenario. They suggested I had just misunderstood how our collaborative project was supposed to work. 2 weeks after that, I was fired for poor performance. And you did not fight back with what? I spun around to face him, my anger and total exhaustion finally boiling over. I had no money for lawyers, and I had no influential connections. Marcus comes from a family with wealth and power. I am a nobody. Just some girl from Queens whose mother is dying in a nursing home I can no longer afford, and whose best friend, my voice cracked. I really thought she loved me. I thought we were like family. Something in Castellano's expression changed. The cold, calculating businessman disappeared, replaced by something much more raw and human. He reached out and his fingers gently brushed along my jaw, tilting my face up so our eyes would meet. You are not a nobody, Natalia. His thumb gently traced my cheekbone, wiping away a tear I did not even realize had fallen. And you are not alone any longer. Why do you even care? I whispered. You do not know me. No. His hand moved to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling themselves in my hair with a gesture that felt both possessive and incredibly gentle. But I do know what it feels like to be betrayed by your own family. And I know that my daughter has turned into someone I no longer recognize, someone who is cruel and feels entitled to everything. You did not deserve what they did to you. What are you planning to do? His smile returned, all sharp edges. It was predatory and dark. I am going to give you exactly what you deserve. Justice, revenge, a life where you do not have to work 3 jobs just to get by. He paused, his gaze searching mine. If you will allow me, I do not understand. Come and work for me. Live in my house. I have more than enough room, and I have more than enough resources to help you rebuild your career and to fight back against Marcus the right way. In exchange, he hesitated for a moment, and something that looked almost like vulnerability flickered across his face. In exchange, you will serve as a reminder to my daughter of what real integrity is. The idea was completely insane. Moving in with a man I did not know, accepting assistance from someone whose name I had only just learned an hour before. Every logical part of my mind was screaming warnings at me, but being logical had gotten me absolutely nowhere. Playing by the rules, having faith in the system, believing in what was fair, all of it had left me broken and completely alone in this tiny apartment, working myself to death simply to survive. What is your full name? I asked him suddenly. Dante. Dante Castellano. He held my gaze without flinching. And before you ask the question, your gut is already screaming at you, yes, I am precisely the kind of man that polite society warns young women about. I have built my entire empire on activities that would make you run away screaming if you knew the specifics. But I have never once lied about who I am, and I have never once betrayed a person who placed their trust in me. Sophia trusted you. Sophia took advantage of my love for her and used that love to justify her own cruelty. There is a significant difference. His grip on my neck tightened just a little. I am offering you a choice, Natalia. You can stay here and continue to just survive from one day to the next while they live in luxury, benefiting from your stolen work. Or you can come with me and take back every single thing they took from you. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I knew this was a critical moment, a precipice. I could feel it. Once I stepped off this ledge, there would be no returning to the supposed safety of being anonymous and poor. But then again, what real safety had that life ever truly given me? Okay, I breathed out. I will come with you. The smile that spread across his lips was triumphant and possessive, and it really should have terrified me. Instead, a strange heat pooled low in my stomach, a dangerous kind of warmth I had not experienced since before Marcus betrayed me. Good girl. His thumb brushed lightly over my lower lip. Pack what you need. We are leaving in 10 minutes. He released me and took a step back, taking out his phone to make a few quiet calls while I began stuffing clothes into a duffel bag with trembling hands. I was leaving my entire life behind for a man I barely knew. I was walking into a world that I did not understand at all. But as I zipped the bag shut and turned to see Dante watching me with those dark, intense eyes, I felt something that I had not felt in 3 long months. It was hope. And it was something else, too. Something much darker and more dangerous. It was desire. Dante's residence was not a home. It was a bold statement of power, constructed from stone and iron. We drove for 40 minutes outside of the city. Vincent expertly navigated the car through tree-lined roads where massive estates were hidden behind imposing gates and high walls. When we finally came to a stop, it was before wrought iron barriers that were at least 12 feet high. They were topped with sensors that probably cost more than most people's vehicles. A guard stepped out from a small booth, recognized the car instantly, and the gates swung open without a single word being exchanged. The driveway felt like it went on forever, winding through perfectly manicured grounds where security lights cast pools of bright illumination in the surrounding darkness. I caught brief glimpses of fountains, elaborate gardens, and buildings that I guessed were guest houses. Then the main house came into view out of the shadows. It was a modern mansion made of glass and stone. It stood 3 stories tall, with sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that were lit from inside, making it glow like a massive lantern. Sophia had been completely silent for the whole drive, curled up against her door like a wounded animal. She finally stirred, and her voice was small. "Daddy, I am so sorry. Please, can we just sit and talk about this? Your room now." Dante did not even look at her as Vincent opened her door. "We will discuss your future in the morning." But Marcus is no longer any of your concern. His tone left no room for argument. "If he makes any attempt to contact you, Vincent will handle it. Is that perfectly clear?" Sophia's face crumpled in despair, but she just nodded and fled into the house, the sound of her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. I remained frozen in my seat, suddenly hit by the immense weight of what I had just agreed to. This was not just about wealth. This was an entirely different universe, a world where armed guards patrolled the grounds and grown women obeyed one-word commands from their fathers. "Second thoughts?" Dante's voice was surprisingly soft, almost as if he understood. "About 100 of them." His laugh was unexpected and sounded genuine. "Good. That proves you are smart." He got out of the car and offered his hand to me again. "Come, I will show you where you will be staying." The inside of the house made the outside look modest. The foyer by itself was larger than my entire apartment. It had a sweeping double staircase that curved up to the second floor, abstract art on the walls that I recognized from expensive auction catalogs, and marble floors that were so polished I could clearly see my own reflection. Wrinkled uniform, tangled hair, exhaustion that was etched into every line on my face. I looked exactly like what I was, a servant entering, widened. "Mrs. Chen will see you to your room," Dante announced. I almost laughed at the name. A strange echo of my past, before realizing it was an entirely different woman. A graceful lady in her 60s emerged from a connecting hallway, her smile radiating genuine warmth. "Miss Romano, it is a pleasure to welcome you. I have readied the guest suite in the East Wing for you." Her English was precise, with a hint of a British accent. "If you would please come with me." I cast a look back toward Dante. A desperate part of my soul pleading for a sign that I was not walking into the greatest mistake of my existence. He met my gaze with an intensity I could not yet understand. It was a look of ownership, of protectiveness, and of a deep hunger. It should have sent a chill down my spine. Instead, a wave of warmth spread through me. "Rest well, Natalia," he said. "Tomorrow we start to mend what they have broken." The guest suite was more spacious than entire apartments I had considered renting in the city. A comfortable sitting area opened into a large bedroom, dominated by a king-sized bed adorned with sheets that must have cost a small fortune. The ensuite bathroom featured a deep soaking tub and a shower with more jets than I could possibly count, along with towels so plush they felt like spun clouds. Mrs. Chen explained the layout of the rooms, informed me that breakfast was typically served at 7 in the morning, but could be arranged earlier, and then departed after a soft reminder to use the intercom if I needed assistance. Finally alone, I sank onto the massive bed and stared up at the high ceiling, my thoughts racing in circles. Just 24 hours earlier, I was digging through my purse for enough change to ride the subway. Now I found myself surrounded by a level of luxury I had only ever seen in magazines, all because of a man who exuded danger and spoke of vengeance as casually as other people might discuss their plans for dinner. I needed to contact someone, but there was no one left. My mother would not even recall our conversation, her memory lost in the haze of her illness. I had no other real friends. Sophia had been my sole confidant, and she had destroyed that bond completely. I had no siblings, no cousins with whom I was close. I was completely on my own, adrift in this bizarre, new world. The only thing tethering me to reality was a man whose full name I had only just learned a few hours before. When sleep finally claimed me, it was a restless state, filled with visions of intense dark eyes and dangerously alluring smiles. Morning came with a soft rap on my door. I jolted awake, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar ceiling, the impossibly soft bedding, and a profound silence unbroken by the city's usual symphony of traffic and noisy neighbors. "Miss Romano, Mr. Castellano is waiting for you for breakfast," came Mrs. Chen's voice, unfailingly polite yet firm. I took a quick shower, feeling a sharp pang of anxiety about my limited wardrobe. I had only packed a few things in my rush to leave. Cheap jeans and tops from a discount retailer were hardly suitable for whatever this new life required. I chose the least wrinkled outfit I could find and walked downstairs, drawn by the rich aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread. The dining room featured massive windows that provided a view of sprawling gardens that appeared endless. Dante was seated at the head of a long table that could have easily accommodated 20 guests, dressed in dark charcoal trousers and a black button-down shirt. The sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, showing powerful forearms marked with a network of faint scars. He was focused on a tablet, a cup of coffee beside him, appearing both perfectly at ease and coiled with a readiness for sudden violence. His head lifted as I walked in, and a subtle shift softened his severe expression. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Better than I have in months," I confessed, the words feeling far too honest. "Good." He indicated the chair directly next to him, not at the other end of the table, but close enough to touch. "Sit down. Eat something. We have a great deal of work ahead of us." The breakfast spread was almost overwhelming in its variety and quantity. There were platters of fresh fruit, assorted pastries, and eggs cooked in 3 different styles. The bacon was thick and flavorful, a world away from the thin, tasteless strips I was used to. I hesitantly filled my plate, acutely aware of his gaze following my every move. "Where is Sophia?" I asked, needing to shatter the heavy silence between us. She is sleeping off her regret, he replied, his voice laced with ice. Or perhaps she is devising a new strategy to earn my forgiveness. Regardless, she is not a matter for your concern right now. She is your daughter. She is a stranger who happens to have my daughter's face. He put the tablet aside, giving me his undivided focus. The girl that I raised would never have taken part in such a heartless act. So either I was a failure as a father, or she has willfully become someone I no longer recognize. In the end, the outcome is identical. The raw pain in his voice was startling and genuine. I had been so consumed by my own sense of betrayal that I had not stopped to consider his. To discover that your own child was capable of such cruelty, to be forced to choose between your love for them and what is right. I am sorry, I murmured. Do not be. None of this is your fault. He reached over, his fingers lightly brushing against mine, where they lay on the table beside my cup. And I was serious about what I said last night. I am going to help you reclaim everything that is yours. How? A predatory smile touched his lips. I have already begun. Vincent worked through the night, compiling all the evidence. He has been comparing your files against Marcus's supposed work product, constructing a case that is completely unassailable. By the week's end, we will possess enough information to completely ruin him, both in his career and in the eyes of the law. That is, if that is how far you wish to go. His thumb began to trace slow circles on my palm. The gesture felt casual, yet it sent a jolt of pure electricity straight up my arm. I employ lawyers who are experts in intellectual property law. They are incredibly expensive, but they are also relentless. Or, he paused, and a dangerous light sparked in his eyes. I have other means at my disposal. They are less conventional, but far more effective. What kind of means? The kind that guarantees Marcus will never find work in your industry again. The kind that makes him truly comprehend the consequences of stealing from someone who is under my protection. His grip on my hand tightened almost imperceptibly. But the decision is yours, Natalia. I will not push you onto a path you do not wish to take. I should have been appalled. I should have heard the unspoken threat, the hint of brutal force or manipulation. Instead, all I registered was a dark and rising sense of satisfaction, a craving for justice that had been simmering inside me since that awful day I found Marcus and Sophia together in my own bed. I want him to lose it all, I heard myself say, my voice steady, just like I did. I want him to understand exactly how it feels when someone you trusted dismantles your entire world. Then that is precisely what will happen. Dante raised my hand to his mouth, his lips pressing a kiss against my knuckles that felt like a searing brand. I give you my word. A polite cough sounded from the doorway. Vincent was standing there, his face a perfect mask of neutrality. Sir, Marcus Thorne is at the main gate. He is demanding to speak with Miss Sophia. A feral look transformed Dante's features. Is that so? Security is holding him. He became hostile when they denied him access. Did he now? Dante released my hand with visible reluctance. Have them escort him to my study. And Vincent, he added, ensure he understands that this is not an invitation. Vincent's smile was thin and sharp. Perfectly understood, sir. After Vincent departed, Dante shifted his focus back to me. Would you care to join me for this discussion? My heart began to pound against my ribs. What are you planning to do? Nothing that will result in a prison sentence, if that is what you are worried about. He rose from his chair and extended his hand to me. However, I believe it is past time for Marcus to grasp exactly who he is dealing with, and more importantly, whose life he has tried to ruin. I placed my hand in his, allowing him to guide me to my feet. We stood very close, so close I could see the tiny flecks of gold within his dark brown eyes. I noticed the faint lines around them, suggesting he might smile more often than his formidable reputation implied. Why are you helping me like this? The question slipped out before I could censor it. Truly, this cannot all be for Sophia's sake. No. His other hand rose to gently cup my cheek. For a man who seemed so dangerous, his touch was incredibly tender. This is about you, Natalia. From the instant I noticed you in that room, trying with all your might to vanish while your gaze was a fire of hurt and fury, I knew right then that I had to learn your history. Then I discovered what they did to you. His jaw tightened. No one is permitted to shatter something exquisite and leave without consequence. Not in my world. I am not exquisite. The admission came from a place inside me that was fractured and hollow. I have nothing, and I am so tired. And you endured, he whispered. His thumb grazed my bottom lip, and my breathing stopped. You continued to struggle when the entire system let you down. You fought when those you cherished betrayed you. You held down 3 separate jobs just to stay afloat. That is not merely beautiful, Natalia. That is courage, sheathed in grace. It is a dangerously potent combination. The space separating us crackled with a live current. I breathed in his scent, watched the steady pulse in his neck, and felt the warmth coming off his skin. This was madness. I had known him for less than a single day. This man was Sophia's father, a person who talked about unlawful solutions and employed men with guns. But the way he was looking at me, as if I were a treasure, he planned to both safeguard and own. My reason dissolved into nothing. We need to go, I said, my voice rough before Marcus is gone. I agree. Yet he remained still, his gaze probing mine. But before that, there is something I must make clear. Once we take this step, once this battle begins, you can never return to the life you knew. Marcus will not forgive you for this. Sophia will not, either. You will be forced to choose a side, and my side. He paused for a moment. My world is complex and full of peril. Are you certain this is your desire? I pictured my cramped apartment, my exhausting jobs, and the memory of Marcus and Sophia mocking my suffering. I remembered every night I had sobbed until I fell asleep, and every morning I woke up asking if I had the strength to continue. I am certain, I said, holding his stare, without flinching. Let me see what they truly took from me. I want to see what your kind of justice feels like. His smile appeared slowly, a menacing curve full of shadowy promises. A sense of pleasure was in it. He wove his fingers between mine and guided me down the hall to his private office. With every footstep, I could feel the final remnants of my former self crumble and blow away. I was stepping directly into a blaze, and I knew it. But there was a chance, a small one, that I would rise from those embers remade into something more powerful, something they would eternally regret provoking. Dante's office was a room of rich, dark wood and expensive leather. Bookshelves reached from the floor to the ceiling, filled with books that showed the wear of being read, not just displayed. A huge desk commanded the room, its polished top empty aside from a laptop and a glass decanter of golden brown liquor. But my focus was seized by the sight of Marcus, standing flanked by 2 of Dante's guards. His fine suit was creased, his usually perfect hair a mess. He looked terrified. Excellent. Mr. Thorne, Dante's voice was almost friendly, which made it sound far more dangerous. I appreciate you coming out on my invitation. I hardly had an option, Marcus retorted, his attempt at defiance falling flat. His gaze landed on me, next to Dante, and a flicker of pure confusion crossed his features. Natalia, what on earth are you doing in this place? She resides here now, Dante stated plainly, as he moved to pour a drink for himself. He made no offer to pour one for Marcus. I am not following. Marcus looked back and forth between us, and I witnessed the exact second that understanding struck him. I saw how the color drained from his face and the way his throat constricted as he tried to swallow. You are with her, but Sophia told me you were only her father. She never said, the information my daughter decides to reveal about my affairs is entirely her choice. Dante eased into his large chair with the fluid grace of a large cat. But let us stop wasting time, Marcus. You took from Natalia her intellectual property, her professional future, and 2 years of her existence. In doing all of that, you stole from an individual who is now under my care. That presents a significant problem. I took nothing. Marcus's voice climbed higher. It was a joint project. If some confusion arose about the credits, Vincent, Dante's tone did not change. Vincent came forward, holding a tablet, and pushed it into Marcus's view. Here are the files with timestamps that prove Miss Romano's original creations. Here are your corporate submissions, dated several weeks after hers. Here are the electronic mails where you distributed her confidential research without her consent. And these, he said, tapping the display, are the messages where you claimed direct credit for algorithms she alone developed. Marcus's face turned from white to a sickly gray. How did you get these? I have a talent for acquiring things, Dante said with a calm air. It is one of the reasons for my continued success. So, this is how events will unfold. You will put your signature on a confession admitting to the theft. You will then resign from your job, issuing a public statement that gives Natalia full credit for the work you claimed. Finally, you will pay her full compensation for all her lost income and future opportunities. That is ridiculous, Marcus sputtered, stumbling back a step. I will be destroyed. My career in this field will be over. Correct. Dante's smile was like ice. That is precisely the intention. You are not allowed to do this. I will fight you. I will... Marcus's expression hardened. I will contact the authorities. I will tell them you are menacing me, forcing me. With what proof? Dante leaned in, and the entire room felt colder. You arrived here on your own, insisting on seeing my daughter. Our security cameras will confirm that you became hostile at our front gate. Nobody has threatened you, Marcus. We are merely having a discussion about professional ethics and their consequences. Sophia is never going to forgive you for this, Marcus spat out, his voice thin with desperation. She is in love with me. My daughter is 26 years of age and has shown poor judgment, Dante stated without emotion, but she remains my daughter. You, on the other hand, are nothing more than an issue that I must resolve. Therefore, you are left with 2 choices. You can sign the papers, make your statement to the public, and leave this place with your body unharmed. Or you can refuse, and you will learn firsthand the true extent of my influence. The unspoken violence of the offer was thick in the room, direct and chilling in its clarity. This is against the law, Marcus said, his voice weak. Perhaps. Dante gave a slight shrug. But to prove that, you would have to explain your presence here, which means you must confess to what you took. And I employ much better lawyers than you can dream of hiring, Marcus. More importantly, I have far less to lose. Can you say that about yourself? I watched as a storm of emotions crossed Marcus's face. There was rage, then terror, then cold assessment. His gaze kept flicking to me, and I recognized the moment he chose to try a new approach. Nat, listen to me. He took a step my way, and Vincent instantly shifted to block his path. You have no idea what you are getting into. This man is a predator. His world will chew you up and spit you out. I made errors, I admit it, but hurting you was never my goal. I We can figure this out. Just you and me. You and me? The laugh that tore from my throat was corrosive. You mean, like when you and Sophia figured things out in my own bed? Or when you figured things out by passing my research off as your own? No, Marcus. Our time for figuring things out is over. You are making a terrible mistake, he hissed, the polite facade dropping to reveal the vile creature beneath it. He will get what he wants from you, and then discard you. That is what his kind always does. Men like me, Dante corrected him, his voice a low and lethal whisper, honor our commitments, which is something you clearly know nothing about. He rose to his feet, carefully buttoning his suit coat. You have until 5 o'clock this afternoon to make up your mind. Sign the papers Vincent is sending, or prepare for what comes next. And Marcus, should you try to make contact with Natalia, Sophia, or any other person in this home, again without my express permission, this deal is withdrawn. Is that understood? Marcus gave me one final look, his eyes begging for something. There was a time when that expression would have broken my heart. I once loved him enough to imagine a whole life by his side. Now, the only thing I felt was a deep, chilling sense of satisfaction. Escort him from my property, Dante ordered, and Vincent and the other man took Marcus by the arms, his weak protests vanishing as they hauled him away down the hall. A profound quiet descended upon the office. I stood motionless, my body vibrating with adrenaline and a feeling that was much darker. It was vindication, I supposed, or the first satisfying taste of retribution. It felt more gratifying than I ever could have imagined. It felt like holding real power. Are you okay? Dante's voice was suddenly right behind me. I am not sure. I spun around to look at him. I am supposed to feel terrible about this, am I not? He was terrified. He had every reason to be. Dante's hand came to rest on my waist, a touch that was both possessive and reassuring. He wounded you, he used you, and he took from you. And he was foolish enough to believe he would never be held accountable for it. But this method you are using, it is not strictly legal, correct? Very few of my activities fit perfectly within the boundaries of the law. Natalia. His other hand lifted, tilting my chin up so my eyes had to meet his. I function in the spaces in between, in the places where the legal system is too compromised or too sluggish to deliver true justice. Does that thought scare you? It ought to. Every sensible instinct I possessed screamed that it should. No, I breathed out. It does not. His gaze intensified, igniting a slow burn deep in my core. You are a dangerous woman. Do you not understand you should flee from men like me? I am done with running. The words felt as if they were drawn from the very depths of my soul. I am done with being powerless, done with letting others take whatever they want from me. Perhaps it is time I learned how to be dangerous myself. Is that your wish? His thumb swept across my lower lip, a gesture that was now both familiar and deeply intimate. To learn how to strike back. Yes. That single word hung in the air between us, carrying the weight of so much more than payback or simple justice. It was a vow, an act of surrender, and a formal declaration of war on the woman I had been only yesterday. Dante's formidable self-control, which he had just used as a weapon to dismantle Marcus, seemed to finally crack. His hold on my waist grew tighter, pulling my body firmly against his own until I felt the hard, unmistakable proof of his arousal against me. Natalia. He spoke my name, and it was a caution, a question, and a desperate appeal all at once. I knew I should step away. This was happening too quickly. It was too raw, too fraught with complications. He was my ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend's father, a self-confessed criminal, a man who could ruin people with a single command. But I had spent months being cautious, being polite, and following rules that in the end had only left me shattered. And in this moment, with his body pressed to mine and his intense gaze burning right through me, I had no desire to be cautious ever again. I pushed up on my toes, and I kissed him. For a fraction of a second, he went completely still. It might have been shock, or perhaps he was giving me a final opportunity to change my mind. Then a low growl rumbled deep in his chest, and he took complete control. One of his hands tangled in my hair, while the other spread across the small of my back, pinning me to him as he claimed my mouth with a raw hunger that should have frightened me. It did not. It sparked to life a feeling I was sure Marcus had permanently snuffed out. Desire, longing, the electric current of being wanted, as if I were something precious, something essential. Dante moved us backward until my shoulders met a bookshelf, the spines of books digging into my skin as he pressed his body against mine. His kiss was nothing like the careful, almost clinical affection Marcus had shown me. This was a statement of ownership, a claim, a brand being seared into me that went far deeper than mere words. "Tell me to stop," he rasped against my lips, his hand sliding up under my shirt to rest on my bare skin. "Tell me this is moving too fast, and that we have to slow down. Do not stop." I pulled him even closer, my own fingers weaving into the thick hair at the nape of his neck. "Do not you dare stop," he groaned, the sound a mix of surrender and victory as he took my mouth again. His hand journeyed higher, closing over the curve of my breast, and I gasped into his kiss. It had been an eternity since I had been touched in this way, as if I were yearned for, needed, and utterly adored. A sharp knock on the study door broke the spell. We pulled apart instantly, both of us breathing heavily. Dante's hair was a mess from where I had gripped it. His lips were swollen, and his eyes blazed with a desire that was barely contained. I was certain I looked even worse, my face flushed, and my appearance thoroughly disheveled. "What is it?" Dante's voice was a low, dangerous growl. "Sir, Miss Sophia is requesting to see you," came Mrs. Chen's voice, ever diplomatic, but unwavering. "She is being quite persistent." Dante shut his eyes for a moment, visibly wrestling for composure. When he opened them again, his controlled mask was mostly back in place, though the fire in his gaze still burned intensely when it landed on mine. "Tell her I will be there in 10 minutes. He waited until Mrs. Chen's footsteps had faded away, then he turned back to face me. "We need to discuss this, about what just happened. Do we really?" I straightened my shirt, my hands still shaking. "It seems pretty clear what happened, Natalia." He moved closer to me, but did not touch me, almost as if he did not trust himself to. "I am not a good man. I have done things in my life that would make you look at me in a completely different way. And you are in a vulnerable state right now, hurt and angry, and what?" A spike of anger shot through me. "You think I kissed you because I am damaged? Because I am so desperate for any kind of affection that I will just throw myself at the very first man who shows me an ounce of kindness?" Number. His jaw was clenched tight. "But I do think you deserve someone far better than a man who builds his empires on the fear of other people. Someone who can offer you a normal life, a safe life." "I do not want normal." The words burst out of me. Normal is what got me betrayed and left me broken. Being cautious offered me nothing. Perhaps I crave something dangerous. Perhaps I need a man who looks at me with your kind of intensity, as if I am the one thing worth setting the world on fire for. The quiet that hung between us felt charged, humming with energy. "You have no idea what you are asking of me," Dante said at last, his voice a low, rough growl. "Then teach me." I moved a step nearer, made bold by the raw desire I could still see burning in his gaze. "Show me what it truly means to belong to you." Because in this moment, that feels like the only tangible thing in my entire world. His self-control shattered. He pulled me hard against his body, his mouth claiming mine, again with a fierce, punishing pressure. This was not like the first kiss. It was less about discovery and more about a declaration of ownership. His hands moved over my form as if he were committing every line, every dip to memory, searing his touch into my skin. Mine, he rumbled against the arch of my neck, his teeth grazing my sensitive flesh. Say the word, Natalia. Tell me that you are mine, yours. The word escaped me, a breathless and desperate admission. I am yours. Another knock came, louder and more demanding this time. Sir, Miss Sophia is becoming extremely agitated. Let her know I am occupied, Dante called out, his intense gaze never leaving my face. Inform her I will attend to her when I am good and ready. He kissed me once more, but this time with a deliberate slowness. It was a thorough kiss, leaving absolutely no uncertainty about his plans for me. When he finally drew away, we were both shaking. Tonight, he vowed, his thumb gently brushing against my swollen lips. Tonight, we will conclude this discussion. For now, however, I must manage my daughter before she breaks something of great value. I could only nod, not trusting myself to speak. He gave me one last kiss, swift and possessive, before he adjusted his clothing and moved towards the exit. He paused in the doorway, glancing back at me with eyes that promised thrilling, forbidden pleasures. Do not leave this house today, Natalia. You are to stay right here where I am certain you are protected. The words should have felt like a cage, like he was smothering me. Instead, they wrapped around me like a shield, making me feel like something precious enough to be guarded. I will be here, I promised him. His smile was the very image of beautiful temptation. Good girl. In the next moment he was gone, and I was left by myself in his private study. My lips were tender from the force of his kisses. My entire body was alight with a desire that had not been satisfied. My thoughts were in a total whirlwind, trying to process how profoundly my world had been turned upside down in less than 24 hours. I had arrived at this place seeking retribution, wanting justice for what was done to me. But now, with the memory of Dante's mouth on mine and the feeling of his claim seared onto my skin, I started to believe I had stumbled upon something immensely more perilous, something that strangely felt like coming home. The rest of the afternoon felt unreal, as if I were in a waking dream. I roamed through Dante's mansion like a spirit, discovering rooms that felt as though they were created for a completely different kind of existence. There was a library holding rare, early printings that I was too nervous to handle. A glass room overflowing with exotic orchids that likely cost more than my former monthly rent. The home gym was so well equipped it could have belonged to a professional sports team. Mrs. Chen discovered me in the solarium, where I was gazing out at gardens with splashing fountains and stone walkways that meandered through impeccably shaped hedges. Miss Romano, Mr. Castellano, instructed me to present this to you. She offered me a slim, black credit card, which already had my name pressed into its surface. It is for any items you may require, clothing, personal things, or anything at all that will make you feel more settled. I looked down at the card as if it were a venomous snake. I cannot possibly accept this. Mr. Castellano was extremely firm in his instructions. Her smile was full of understanding, almost like a mother's. He is not a person who acts without serious intention, my dear. When he makes the choice to shield someone, his commitment is absolute. That is precisely what makes me so nervous, I admitted, turning the plastic over and over in my hand. I have no idea what he expects from me in return. It is possible he wants nothing more than to see you find happiness, Mrs. Chen suggested, patting my shoulder softly. I have been in Mr. Castellano's employment for 15 years. In that time, I have observed him in many states. He can be merciless, strategic, and frightening when the situation demands it. But I have never before witnessed him look at any person in the same way that he looks at you. A flush of heat rose up my neck. We hardly know one another. Sometimes, getting to know someone requires many years. Other times, it happens in a single, defining moment. She walked toward the doorway, then stopped. Miss Sophia is taking her lunch in her private quarters. Mr. Castellano believed you would rather not have an encounter with her today. That is considerate of him. He is capable of it when he so chooses. Her face softened into a kind expression. You should give him a proper chance, Miss Romano. Very few individuals ever see the true man who exists behind his formidable reputation. However, I have a feeling that you could be one of the rare people who can. When she was gone, I remained seated with the credit card, flipping it between my fingers. Everything was happening too quickly. My priority should have been on rebuilding my professional life, on ensuring Marcus paid for his actions. But instead, my thoughts were consumed by the memory of Dante's kiss. I kept hearing the possessive rumble in his voice when he had declared I was his. My mobile phone vibrated. It was the inexpensive prepaid device I started using when I could no longer pay for my old service. A message appeared from a number I did not recognize. Marcus has signed the papers. A full confession will be made public by this Monday. Your professional standing will be cleared. Vincent. I stared down at the words on the screen, bracing for the wave of triumph I expected to feel, the deep gratification of justice finally being delivered. The feeling did arrive, but it was much fainter than I had imagined, completely eclipsed by the vivid recollection of Dante's hands on me. And his vow for the evening remained an unresolved tension in the air. What was happening to me? I should have been overjoyed. Instead, all I could do was count the hours until I would be able to see him again. The evening settled in with a slow change in the light coming through the large windows. The grand house grew quieter, its daily energy winding down. I had taken a shower and put on the most presentable outfit I had with me, wishing with all my might that I owned something more elegant, something that would not look so out of place in these luxurious surroundings. A knock on the door of my suite caused my heart to leap into my throat. Vincent was standing there, his face a perfect mask of professional calm. Mr. Castellano requests that you join him for dinner. It will be served in the private dining room on the second floor. What about Sophia? Miss Sophia is having her meal separately. She was explicitly told not to interrupt you or Mr. Castellano tonight. The journey to the dining room seemed to stretch on forever. Vincent escorted me through corridors, decorated with art I could not name, but I knew it was beyond priceless. We walked by rooms that spoke of fortunes built over many lifetimes. We came to a halt before large double doors made of dark wood, and Vincent rapped on them once before swinging them open. The private dining area was intimate, with a table set perfectly for two, illuminated mostly by the soft glow of candles. Windows reached from the floor to the high ceiling, looking out onto gardens where lights now twinkled like captured stars. And by those windows stood Dante, his profile sharp and stunning against the encroaching darkness. He turned his head as I walked in, and the intense hunger in his gaze made me forget how to breathe. Natalia. He moved in my direction, his pace deliberate and full of purpose. You look absolutely beautiful. I look like I am in clothing I have worn for 3 straight days, because it is literally all that I have, to my name. The words escaped with a more bitterness than I had planned. We can address that tomorrow then. He gently took my hand and guided me toward the table. For tonight, my only wish is to speak with you, to truly have a conversation, with no distractions and no complications. Our dinner was brought by a staff that moved in and out of the room like silent specters. They poured wine that I was certain cost a small fortune. The food was presented like a work of art, but I barely registered its taste. My attention was completely fixed on Dante, seated across from me. The flickering candlelight played with the shadows on his face, making him appear both menacing and devastatingly handsome at the same time. "Tell me about your mother," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. The question took me by surprise. "Why do you ask?" "Because she is important to you, and because I want to understand what shaped you into a person who continues to fight when the entire world is telling you to surrender." And so, I told him. I spoke of the mother who brought me up all by herself after my father vanished, who held down 2 different jobs to see me through college, who gave up everything so I could have the chances she was never given. I talked about the aggressive dementia that had been stealing her from me, one piece at a time, leaving me with towering medical expenses and a mother who often no longer knew who I was. "The facility costs $4,000 every month," I confessed, my eyes fixed on my wineglass. I was barely staying afloat before Marcus completely ruined my career. Now I am a full 3 months behind on the payments. They have been understanding, but my voice began to tremble. I am so scared they will make her leave, that I will have to put her in a cheaper place where they will not care if she is comfortable or if she is frightened, or they will not. Dante's voice was firm, completely certain. "Vincent made contact with the home this afternoon. Your entire balance has been paid, and there is now enough money held in escrow to cover her expenses for the next 5 years. I just stared at him, unable to process his words. "Your mother's care is now secure. You do not have to think about it ever again. I cannot accept this." "Dante, that is far too much. I cannot take that from you. It is already settled." He reached over the table, his hand closing over mine. "You are welcome to pay me back if that makes you more comfortable. But to be honest, Natalia, the cost of 5 years in that home is less than what I spend on maintaining my cars. To me, it is nothing, but to you, it is everything. So, I am asking you to please let me handle this." Hot tears began to sting my eyes. No one had ever done something like this for me. Marcus knew all about my mother's condition and had promised he would help after we were married, but he never actually did anything. He always had a reason why it was not the right time. Dante had known me for a single day, and he just solved the problem. Why? The word felt broken as it left my lips. "Why are you doing all of this for me?" He stood from his chair, walking around the table to gently pull me up to my feet. His hands cupped my face, his thumbs carefully brushing away the tears that had begun to fall without my consent. "Because the very instant I saw you in that ballroom, some part of me recognized a similar part of you. I saw your pain, your strength, and the will to keep going, even when survival feels impossible." His voice became raw and vulnerable. "I have built my entire empire on my ability to read people, Natalia, on seeing the things they try to conceal, what they secretly crave, and what they will do when they are pushed to their limit. And the moment I looked at you, I saw a person who deserved so much more than the cards life had dealt her. That is not a real answer. No." His smile was tinged with sadness and a deep self-awareness. "Then let us try this. I am a deeply selfish man who desires you in ways that are probably not healthy for either of us. A man who looks at you and sees something worth protecting, something worth owning, and something worth burning the entire world to the ground for, if that is what it takes. Is that a more honest answer for you?" My heart was pounding against the inside of my chest. You hardly even know me. I know what matters. His forehead came to rest against mine, his warm breath ghosting over my lips. I know that you are far stronger than you believe you are. I know you taste like the feeling of hope and feel like the promise of redemption. I know that when I put my hands on you, a piece of me that has been broken for a very long time starts to mend. Dante, I realize this is completely insane, he went on, his tone almost desperate. I am aware that I should let you rebuild your life on your own. Find someone suitable, a man who is safe, but I find that I cannot, Natalia. The very thought of you walking away from me, of you ever belonging to another man, it makes me want to lock every single door in this entire house and keep you right here, where I know you will be safe and you will be mine. That sounds crazy. It should sound possessive. I leaned in and kissed him. This time, there were no interruptions. There were no knocks on the door or other duties to pull us in different directions. Dante let out a low sound from deep in his throat and intensified the kiss, his hands beginning to explore my body with a growing sense of urgency. He gently guided me backward until my back was flat against the wall next to the window. The coolness of the glass was a stark contrast to the intense heat of his body as it pressed into mine. "Tell me to stop," he growled, his voice vibrating against my throat as his teeth lightly grazed my sensitive skin. "Tell me that you need more time, more space, that you need sanity." "I need you." I managed to pull his shirt free from his pants, my hands finding his bare skin. I explored the hard lines of his muscles and the faint scars that hinted at stories I did not yet know. I need to feel like I am alive again. I need to erase everything from my mind except for this exact moment, this exact feeling. He captured my mouth with his once more, swallowing my words as his hands worked on the buttons of my shirt with a singular, determined focus. Cool air washed over my skin as he pushed the fabric aside, his eyes turning a darker shade as he took in the sight of me. "Beautiful," he whispered, his fingers lightly tracing the delicate curve of my collarbone. The gentle swell of my breast, so incredibly beautiful. He kissed me again, but slower this time, more thorough, as his hands explored my body with a kind of reverent focus. I had once thought that Marcus knew my body, but this was something entirely new. Dante touched me as if he were learning a new language, committing to memory every single one of my responses, every spot that made me gasp or made me tremble. When he finally lifted me into his arms, my legs instinctively wrapped around his waist as he carried me toward what I could only guess was his bedroom through a connecting door. I felt absolutely no fear. I felt only a powerful sense of anticipation, a deep desire, and the bone-deep conviction that this was precisely where I was meant to be. His bedroom was decorated with dark wood and a masculine simplicity, the room dominated by an enormous bed that he placed me on with a surprising gentleness. He stood by the edge of it, his eyes slowly traveling over my body in a way that made me feel both completely exposed and incredibly powerful all at once. "This is your last chance, Natalia." His voice was tight with effort. His control was hanging on by a single thread. "After this moment, you will be mine. There will be no going back. There will be no pretending that this was just a mistake. You will be mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, a wave of heat pooled low in my stomach. It made me reach out for him with hands that trembled slightly. "Then make me yours," I whispered back. "Show me exactly what it means to belong to someone who will never betray me." Something in his expression finally broke. It was a mixture of relief, of triumph, and of pure hunger. He came down on top of me, his body covering mine, and he began to show me precisely what it meant to be claimed by Dante Castellano. Many hours later, I was lying in his arms, my body wonderfully tired, and marked with the evidence of his possession. There were faint bruises on my hips, on my throat, in places that nobody else would ever see. Dante's fingers were tracing lazy, idle patterns across my bare back, his heartbeat a steady and reassuring rhythm beneath my ear. "What is going to happen now?" I asked, my voice soft in the comfortable silence. "Now you will live here. You will rebuild your entire career using my resources and my connections. Marcus's full confession will be made public on Monday, and I guarantee you will have job offers by Tuesday." His arms tightened around me. "And you will stay in my bed and in my life, where I can ensure you are always safe." "What will happen with Sophia?" He remained silent for a long moment. "Sophia has made her own choices. She can choose to continue living in this house, but under very strict new conditions. Or she can leave and try to make her own way in the world. No matter what she decides, she will no longer have any access to you, to any information about you, or to my unconditional financial support. She is about to learn what it means to face real consequences, even if that lesson is coming very late." "And what about us?" I tilted my head back so I could look at him properly. "What exactly are we?" His smile was possessive, fiercely protective, and filled with a dark and beautiful promise. "You are mine, and I am yours. You are my obsession, my addiction, my personal redemption. And you." He shifted, rolling me beneath him, his body pressing mine down into the mattress in a way that made my breath catch in my throat. "You are my dangerous girl who finally learned how to bite back. You are my beautiful survivor who chose the devil instead of choosing safety." "Not a devil," I corrected him, pulling his face down for another kiss. "My devil. There is a very important difference." "Yes," he agreed, his words spoken against my lips, his hands already beginning to map my body all over again, the desire between us quickly reigniting. "There certainly is." 6 months after that night, the courtroom was filled to capacity with reporters, industry colleagues, and curious strangers. I was seated in the very front row, wearing a power suit that Dante had insisted on purchasing for me, and I watched as Marcus's sentence was finally read aloud. 18 months of probation, extensive community service, and a permanent mark on his professional record. His entire reputation was left in tatters, and his engagement to Sophia had been broken off after she finally understood that he had only been using her for her father's influential connections. It should have felt like a complete victory. And in some ways it did, but more than anything, it just felt like I was getting closure. Dante's hand found its way to mine, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles in that now deeply familiar gesture. He had been my solid rock through all of it, the legal challenges, the intense media scrutiny when my story became public, and the slow, difficult process of putting my career and my self-confidence back together. But he had been so much more than that. He had been my partner, my lover, and my home. "Are you ready to leave?" he murmured, as the courtroom slowly started to empty out. "Almost." I turned to face him, studying the features of this man who had come into my life with the force of a hurricane and had changed absolutely everything. "I have to tell you something." A flicker of concern crossed his eyes. "What is wrong?" "Nothing at all is wrong." I took a deep breath, and I let the 3 words come out. "I love you. I am aware that it has only been 6 months. I understand that our entire connection began with chaos and a thirst for vengeance and all the toxic things that people tell you to avoid. But I am in love with you, Dante. I love the shadows within you and the protection you offer, and I especially love the way you see me as if I am the most valuable thing in your entire universe." His whole demeanor shifted, revealing surprise, then elation, and something that looked almost fragile beneath the surface. "Natalia, I realize you might not share these feelings. I love you." The words burst from him, powerful and absolute. "I believe I have loved you from that very first night at the ball, when you met my gaze with eyes that were filled with so much hurt and fury. I have loved you through every single step of watching you become stronger, witnessing you take back everything they stripped away from you. My love for you is so immense, it frightens me, because I have never allowed myself to be this exposed with another person." He gently drew me up to my feet, his arms encircling me, and I felt a profound sense of rightness settle deep within my bones. This man, this incredibly dangerous, beautiful, and complex man, belonged to me, and I belonged completely to him. He pulled back to look directly at me, his voice suddenly serious. "Marry me. This is not because you still need my protection, because you absolutely do not. It is not for revenge, or for convenience, or for any other logical reason. I am asking you to marry me because I cannot picture a single day of my future that you are not in. I am asking because you are the only one who ever bothered to see the man behind the fearsome reputation. I am asking because I want to open my eyes every morning for the rest of my existence and know that you belong to me." My vision blurred with tears, a completely different kind than the ones I had cried 6 months ago. These were tears of joy, of hope, and of the stunning realization that I had somehow found my way to exactly where I was always meant to be. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." His kiss was a promise of forever. When we finally parted, the courtroom was deserted, except for Vincent. He stood near the door, and I thought I saw a rare smile on his typically stoic face. "Should we let Sophia know?" I asked as we started to walk. Toward the exit, my hand held tightly and securely in his. For a moment, Dante's features hardened. She is working on herself. She is seeing a professional, trying to understand the darkness that allowed her to be so cruel. Perhaps we can have a relationship with her again, one day. But for now, you are what matters most to me. Our future together is my only priority." I leaned against him, taking in the scent that now felt like home, a mix of sandalwood and security, of danger and complete devotion. Our future sounds absolutely perfect. As we emerged into the bright sunlight, a crowd of reporters shouted questions that we simply ignored. Vincent moved ahead, clearing a path for us to the car that was waiting. I thought of the woman I'd been only 6 months before. She was broken, filled with desperation, and completely unseen. That woman no longer existed, consumed by the fire of Dante's protection and my own refusal to be defeated. In her place stood someone far stronger, someone who had learned that the most dangerous path can sometimes be the right one. I went to that ballroom just trying to survive. Instead, I discovered my own salvation. It was wrapped in an expensive suit and backed by deadly promises. It wore the face of my best friend's father, but it carried the soul of a man who intimately understood being shattered and still choosing to heal. "I love you," Dante murmured, just as the car door closed, shutting us away from the noise of the world. "I love you too," I said back, and I meant it with every scarred, mended, and transformed piece of my entire heart. The girl who was so easily betrayed was gone forever. Standing in her place was a woman who learned how to fight back, how to take what she deserved, how to love a devil and be cherished by him completely. And that, I thought to myself, as Dante's mouth found mine again, was truly the greatest revenge of all. What an absolutely breathtaking journey we have just experienced together. We watched Natalia transform from a broken invisible woman serving champagne to the very people who destroyed her, into a powerful survivor who reclaimed her career, her dignity, and her future. If this story moved you, please show your support by hitting that like button, and be sure to subscribe for more incredible tales of betrayal, redemption, and the kind of love that changes everything. Turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. Now I have to ask you, what was the moment that hit you the hardest? Was it the heartbreak of seeing her stolen ring on Sophia's finger? Was it the moment Dante offered her a choice? Or was it that final, powerful declaration of love in the courtroom? Please leave your answer in the comments below and let us start a conversation. Your engagement and support mean absolutely everything to the future of this channel. Thank you so much for being here with me today. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience.